Welcome to Two Women in Crypto, a weekly podcast birthed on a whim by two women who are excited about the cryptocurrency landscape and have a shared passion about empowering others to step into the digital, tokenized world of the future. We offer tips, tricks, and our own individual insights as to how to begin to navigate this shift. We are not financial advisors nor experts. We are just here to encourage you to look at the possibilities. So welcome to the future. You're right on time. Good morning.
Good morning, Kelly. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Two Women in Crypto.
Been a hot minute.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute. So as everybody, I think everybody knows, I live in Florida. We couldn't get the podcast out last week because of the hurricane. But, you know, our house is safe. We're safe. Everything is good. Yeah. Moving forward. But, you know, Kel, it's real interesting, right? Because we lost power. And we lost power for, you know, almost a whole day. It wasn't super bad here. But it's a good learning experience of how unprepared we are.
Even though we think we're prepared, right? Because I know you and I chatted about it. It's like, yeah, I'm prepared. But when? So, yeah, I'm curious as to what you're going to share here.
So the first thing I did when the power went out is I ran into the garage and I grabbed, I have two awesome fans and they run on batteries because my wife has red hair. She doesn't really like Florida and the heat, the weather. So I ran to the garage, I put the batteries in the fan and I put it and I'm like, I don't know, it's 50 degrees outside because usually it's really, really hot. Like after a hurricane, you get the bugs come in and it's muggy and it's like disgusting. No, it was like change of season, put a sweatshirt and a hat on. So that really wasn't good prepping.
Mother Nature and her temperamental swings.
Right? So then I'm making coffee exactly when the power goes out. So I grab my little solar generator and I plug the coffee pot in. Highly recommend everybody getting, even if you go to Home Depot, get a little Jackery or something like that, because you can plug in your phones, you can plug in fans, anything that's not 3-prong into a little like 1,000-watt, generator. And then the other thing is too, is like, I went to go fill up my propane tank for the grill. They're sold out. So I came home, totally thought, okay, we're just going to go to my parents. And then I worked late that night and it's like almost, 10 o'clock. And my parents are like, it's not going to be that bad. Just stay home. Well, it was a lot worse than we had thought. So now we're like boiling water, like on our grill, propane goes out. And I never got the backup propane tank filled. So, I mean, we just kind of made it with food. I mean, we were literally eating like we do like these things like hurricane brownies. So we made a cake this time because we had a gluten-free, dairy-free cake in a box, and Rowan makes this awesome icing out of like raw cacao. It's really good. But we're literally eating cake for lunch because we had to save our meat for dinner. And we were just laughing, but really good learning experience. Like, because once an event like that actually happens, you can't really prepare in that moment while the situation is happening. So anything we can do beforehand, it goes a really, really long way.
So I know you and I talked a little bit about it. And so what would you do differently just in terms of organization? I'm not sure if it is a conversation I have with you or I have a couple of other friends down there that I've chatted with briefly. I mean, because I think so often we think in our mind we've done all this prep work, but then when we go out into our garage, it's like, oh my gosh, where's my prep box? It's buried in the corner, way back in the, back of the garage under 10 boxes. And so just curious what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, it's such a good thing. So one, you would get all the things out, right? Because I didn't have my solar generator out. We really thought we were going to go to my parents. And for us, we'll go to my parents next time. Because my poor parents lost power and they have a pool. And then they were hand right? Because the pump wasn't working to like drain the water out. And it wasn't really like a big windstorm here. It was more of a water storm. So it was the flooding and the pools were filling up really quickly. But I would have everything laid out. Flashlights. Flashlights are big, losing power. You definitely want the flashlights. And like I said, I don't think there's any way to be 100% prepared, but good learning experience. And now we're going to gather with some folks in the community and we're going to talk about being more independent.
Sure.
Because it's the same thing. It's like, like, wow, how much cash do we have in the house? And, what if, like, I know I shared this with you, like the next day, like I went to the local grocery store because all the shops, everyone were still out of power. The restaurants were out of power. I wanted to get my friends who own a restaurant sandwiches because they were at the shop all day with no food. Their food went bad. I walk into Publix, the deli section's closed. And I'm like, okay. No cheese, no. And I'm walking through, the whole produce section had like tarps over it. Things were getting pulled. All the meat was pulled, all the butter, all the milk, everything was gone. I've never experienced anything like that in my life. Like not one piece of meat.
And I think this is so really, really important. And that happened because
for some reason, their generator didn't go on. Not only that generator, but the other grocery store down the street, their generator didn't work either. So
that's crazy. That's
and it's
wild. Yeah, that's just unusual.
And I know a lot of people are like, hey, we've been talking about prepping since like, the government told us to stay home with the virus. And it's kind of been 2 years. But I'm telling everybody, it happened so quickly. Like, what if we had a supply chain issue and that was the end of our meat, the end of our dairy, the end of our butter for an extended period of time? Like the food, they're great. We got the food back in, no big deal. But what if it was a big deal? So It's just stuff to kind of sit with and think about, because in that respect, like, we have the extra freezer, but anything that we can do to become a little bit more independent, with our food, with our money. That's why we encourage everybody, get that ledger, get your SafePal, get your coins offline, because if we lose access, we know our coins are safe.
Absolutely. And I know that there's so many topics that we're going to touch base on today, but just that as a peace of mind, when you do see outside of Mother Nature and you want to say political conditions or whatever the case may be, when a news flash does happen, that is one of the first things my mind will go to, is the fact that, okay, all right, well, at least I know my coins are safe. If there's nothing else I can say as far as everything else that's going on in the world, I can say at least that, which is a huge comfort for me.
No, it's a huge comfort for me too. And like, again, like even having cash in the house, right? Because when you need gas or you need food, and if the registers are down, cash becomes king.
Oh, absolutely.
They'll only take cash if everything else isn't working. The same thing if you want to fill up your car or fill up your gas can, you need physical cash.
Yep.
So
absolutely do. Well, I'm glad first of all, I'm glad you're safe, and prayers to everybody who was affected across the board. I know that there was some really devastating damage done. So just, holding the highest and best for everybody to navigate that. There's a lot there. And I'm so glad your community came together, as you would only expect and know to be true, and encouraging everybody to have the same type of hopeful community weaving where you live also, regardless of the circumstances.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there was one restaurant that didn't lose their food, and then they made everybody who were still out of power, they made everyone dinner for free.
Yeah.
So we do. I mean, we have a beautiful community, and the thing is, most communities would rise and come together. So, folks, go out there, learn, like get to know people, You know, it's so super important, like more important than probably anything is to get your community together, right?
Yeah.
Because in numbers, what I don't have, someone else will have.
Right.
And it's a learning experience of reaching out and asking for help when you need it.
Right. And that can be very humbling, especially here in the United States, in my opinion, because we have been so kind of conditioned that everybody separates. You know, your kids get older, everybody gets out of the house, and very seldom do families come back together. And, you know, for whatever reason that is, but it's really important to be able to lean back in and say, you know, raise your hand and say, you know, this is a tough time for me. What can we do here? You know, that's a really important thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, good points. Well, hey, before we dive into some of the other news, I just
Yeah.
want to do a couple of housekeeping items because can you believe we're already in October? And for me, this is big because we've been in the middle of planning my daughter's wedding and we're just a few days out now. So just really excited to be in this really exciting, beautiful time of life. But before we know it, the month will be clicking by very, very quickly. And we do have our monthly Q&A. It's at the end of the month. It's the 29th. I just went blank on my date. It is what is it? 29th, October 29th. But the week prior to that, we're hosting a really, really cool class. I shouldn't say, well, we are, but Andrea is teaching it. It's Web 3.0. Super excited about this just from being able to be in the room myself and listen to what she has discovered. So we would love to have you all join us. Cost is $45. You'll find the information on our website under classes and events. And I'm super excited about that as well. And yeah, just it seems like there's so much in the news and there always is so much to talk about. So
yeah, definitely. And just to touch base on that Web 3.0 class, like we're going to be talking about NFTs, tokenization. What is Web 3.0? Like we've had Web 1.0, Web 2.0, Web 3.0. And, you know, I know this is something that Kelly and I have touched base upon like in the past, but like when we think about it, Kelly, we went through the internet revolution. Most humans only go through one major paradigm shift in their lifetime.
right.
We are fortunate enough to go through two, right? So I get that it's frustrating. I get that it's overwhelming. There's a learning curve. And again, like we're gonna make this fun, right? Like we just released our new song. It's a parody with Pat Benatar, We Belong. Like blockchain is the future of finance, and we are all in this together globally. So globally, we are going to come together, and we are coming together. There's a lot of us, and we might be quiet, and we might be doing our little things, getting ourselves prepared, but you know, we are all in this together, and the song is uplifting, it's inspirational. I suggest everybody check out the Hodlers for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you go to thehodlers.net, it's HODLRS.net, thehodlers.net. You'll see a whole playlist of songs, and it's on our YouTube channel as well. But each song really has, you know, an educational message, but an empowering message as well. And so they kind of are a class to each. Each one of them is kind of like a little mini study session.
Yeah, and it's done in a super fun way. So, you know, and the Hodlers like hold on for dear life. Like that's the whole point, you know, like we're moving from a legacy financial system to a new financial system that's based on technology. And pretty much what's going to happen is that our current financial system is going to expand and connect to the blockchain.
Right.
This is the future of finance. So again, we're super early. We're right on time. Like we always say, and it's so exciting.
It
So
is.
I'm going to put my sweatshirt on. I can't decide if I'm hot or cold today. The weather is so weird here in Florida. I was telling Kelly, it's usually like 100 degrees after a hurricane, but now it's like 50. It's not 50, but it feels like 50.
Sure.
It's probably like 70.
Yeah, but you know what? Your body gets very acclimated to where you're at. So when there's a big temperature change like that, you're certainly going to feel it.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So, Kelly and I, it was funny. We were kind of giggling last night, like coming up with like a title for today's show because there's so many things going on.
Oh,
And that
there's
was, to lose power and not be connected for like a day or two. And then just those 2 days, I was like, oh no, like, what's going on?
what's happening in the world at large, right?
Yeah, yeah. So first, let's just start off with like super recent news. Credit Suisse, they're a huge international bank, way bigger than Lehman Brothers, and Lehman Brothers fell during the 2008 financial crisis. It was kind of like the catalyst of that recession that most of us have lived through. Now, Credit Suisse is having issues with credit swap defaults, right? So a lot of people are starting to pull their money, and it's not just Credit Suisse. It's Deutsche Bank. Last night before I went to sleep, now there's rumors about UBS, which is the Bank of Scotland. Okay, so we really want to start keeping an eye on certain things that are going on in the news and see how the government and the Federal Reserve Bank, how they react to this, right? Because we are going through quantitative tightening right now in the United States. We are taking money out of the system. That's why the dollar is so strong. But what happens when the dollar is so strong? The United States has the world reserve currency, right, Kel?
Right.
So what happens with emerging countries, their local currency, right, whether that's the peso, whatever it is, they're losing value. They pay their trade in dollars, which is strengthening. So basically, the strength of the United States dollar is hurting emerging countries.
Yep.
So did you see United Nations came out and they are urging the Federal Reserve to stop raising interest rates?
No, I did not see that. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that shows you the pressure that all these other countries are under. Not just on, I mean, on all fronts. On all fronts.
Totally. I mean, like this whole everything that we're going through is global. It's not just the United States, but people who live in the United States, like I know prices are high, like we know our dollar's devalued. Now my butter, because we've been tracking this, right, in the podcast, my butter went from like $3.99, it's almost $7.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think everybody has a story. I mean, yesterday I had to be out and about and I had to grab something to eat, and a small little sandwich cost me $11. I almost fell off my car seat. I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, seriously, $11 for this? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're all feeling it in every avenue of our lives.
In every avenue. And it's just really important to note because it's just like we're feeling it here in the United States. I can't even imagine what it's like for other countries that use the dollar, how,
Right.
How it's really affecting, families in these countries. And it's just like, and again, just from like an investment trading perspective, okay, like
Right.
feelings aside, if Jerome Powell comes out and he's just like, we have to do this for the greater good, and we have to stop raising interest rates, Bitcoin and Ethereum and crypto they're going to go up.
Right.
They will go up until Jerome Powell comes out again and he's like, we got to raise interest rates. If we do that, inflation's going to go up even more. So we're kind of like, and we can't win situation.
Right. Absolutely. Between a rock and a hard place, as the old adage goes.
Exactly. So if we take what's going on in the United States and then we look at Japan, we look at England, we look at Europe, we look at Germany, we look at BlackRock and Larry Fink and what he's saying. He wants to reimagine the IMF and the World Bank. So when I sit down and think about all of these things, and we're going to get into each piece, right? But it's like, what happens if, like, the British pound, for example? So the British pound was collapsing. The Bank of England stepped in. They bought back their old debt, their bonds, because if they didn't buy back their bonds, the pension funds would have collapsed.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So, and I know this is kind of scary stuff, but we want to really look at this because if all these like really super powerful countries start to fail in their economic system, which I believe was totally planned, because it's just one step closer to moving to this new financial system that they're envisioning, right? But again, it's just like, I totally lost my train of thought.
Well, you're talking about Europe, like buying back the bonds, and what will that do ultimately?
Right.
As they continue.
So like when we look at BlackRock, which holds $10 trillion, okay, and their executive legal counsel just left BlackRock, joined the Federal Reserve Bank. I think that was yesterday. They made that announcement. So again, these players, all we do is move, and we see all these players from Goldman Sachs, from Fidelity, from BlackRock, they're all moving towards blockchain technology, right? All of these new technological companies, we got executives leaving legacy systems, moving into the new system. Now, if the pound would actually fail, we have Japan, right? They have major deflation. They've been going through this for decades. And like the president of their company, or their country, they don't even want to raise interest rates. Right. So what happens if we go through another Bretton Woods moment where we reset the economy? Will the IMF, the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, the World Bank, will they connect and try to become one government? I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I'm seeing the pieces of the puzzle. And when I think about Larry Fink, when he's like, let's reimagine the World Bank and the IMF, which were created the last Bretton Woods moment that we had, okay? They created these, and now they're changing. They're changing like what they're actually in charge of. Like,
it's on such a vast scale, and it's not just it's everything. So for instance, and if we can just, it's on the same topic, but if we remember just 6-7 months ago, the housing market was, you didn't even have to list your home and the houses were gone, right? Well, just within the last 3 weeks, I've seen 5 or 6 houses go up for sale in the neighborhood that I'm at.
Okay.
But in totality, what's going to happen, in my opinion, just kind of knowing how the cycles work, is that as these houses go up, and with this whole economic situation, all those big guys like BlackRock, they have cash in pockets. They're just going to continue to snatch up all of these homes for full cash price, which a majority of the population cannot compete with unless you have, a bank of mom and dad that you can lend from, older money or whatever the case may be, or you've done, there's this housing disparity that just continues to broaden with this as well. And that's just another tier to this whole conversation, is what's going to happen to the housing markets and how accessible is housing going to be.
Right. And it's such a good point, because I heard now, like, if you want to go and buy a house and get a mortgage, it's 7%. And that's with impeccable credit.
Yeah.
So, and if Jerome Powell decides, hey, we got to keep raising interest rates, we got to keep that dollar strong, interest rates are going to keep going up and the market will keep getting pushed down. But at some point, they will stop, right? Think about England. I think they went, like a week or two. They raised the interest rate a little bit and they had a bond crisis. Like, that's how fragile like the whole economy is. And it's really important that we talk about England and Europe and things like that, because it affects us, because we're all connected through trade and all of these different things. We're kind of all in this together. So if those countries wind up falling, that's when I think the United States we're right behind England and Europe, right behind them.
Yep. So we just take a deep breath.
Yeah, and also understand this. As one system falls, the next system will get put into place. Like even if it takes like a year or two, we are moving to blockchain. And I think like something that I saw, which I thought was super interesting, is so Chainlink had a really big conference. It's called SmartCon. And what they announced was a partnership with Swift, who's partnered with 11,000 financial institutions to provide interoperability between Swift and all of those institutions. Again, connecting the old legacy system to the blockchain. Not using Link, right? This has nothing to do with the token. This just has to do with connecting the systems. Now they're running a proof of concept, which I believe it's either already done because they've been doing this for years. They've had everything is planned out. They've been testing central bank digital currency, right? I mean, we've done the research. We know that they decide when the masses can learn what's going on. So unless you're like a researcher or in IT, like really doing the deep dive, you're just not going to know that this is even going on. Right. But this proof of concept is really interesting because it's going to allow Swift to transact with cryptocurrencies, you know, connecting through Chainlink. And did Chainlink go up or down in price?
Well, I'm nothing. Yeah.
Like just flat. We're in a bear market. So this is huge news. It doesn't matter that they're actually using or not using the token. If we were in a bull market, Chainlink would have went up 40, 50% probably, right? I mean, this is huge news, you know?
So every chart is so similar. It's just yeah.
Yep. So we're kind of waiting for that catalyst, that shift, in order to start going back up. And that's why I think it's great that everyone who listens to Two Women in Crypto are prepared, right? Because we've diversified our money because we don't know 100% what's going to happen, but we do know we're moving into this new technology. So we don't want to have, not financial advice, but I don't want to have all my money in US dollars. I don't want to have all my money in a bank account.
Right.
Right. And again, we saw Coinbase, and I think we should talk about what happened with Coinbase.
Yeah, I think it's really important because, you know, we can be shown what's happening, but the underlying energy behind it so often is not really present to us. But recently they had an outage where you were not able to access your funds through your banking account. They, you know, removed access to your credit cards. And that's a really big deal, especially if you're one of those Coinbase users that are having your monthly paychecks deposited into your Coinbase account so that you could utilize their rewards programs and things like that. I mean, that is a concern. That's a major concern for me because I don't want to have any of my money sitting anywhere where something like this could potentially happen. That includes a bank. So it's all of it. That we're in such uncharted waters that I think you just need to be prepared for any scenario. But Coinbase, underlying, you know, behind all of their platforms, there seems to be a current of unrest and instability that I think we need to be mindful of.
Right. So what we want to do is we want to open other accounts, right? We want to diversify, right? So I know we've talked about this before. Like I keep a good portion of my USDC on SafePal. But again, if we want to buy certain things and we want to use, you know, anyone who's kind of new to blockchain and crypto, of course, go to Coinbase and go to these other things. But now we really want to get a little bit more educated. Use Binance.us, use Gemini, use Kraken. You can use Uphold as well. Uphold will hold your crypto, though, for 68 days. But when I transfer money from SafePal to Uphold, convert it into USD, it hits my account now within like 24, 48 hours.
Right.
Okay. So again, once we get regulatory clarity, we will be able to send our money directly into our bank account, peer to peer, through these systems. And that's why it's so important. We're just waiting for regulatory clarity, which we should have sometime in the beginning of 2023.
That's what we're hoping for sure. And each of these platforms have their challenges. There is not one that's perfect, and there's not one that I would say is 100% stable. But I think that, it's like even with Binance, your monies can be held for 5 days before you can invest it. So there's definitely this lag time. So back to what we say every podcast and what we've been speaking about in this one as well is, if you think you need cash, and we all need cash, keep it accessible. Make sure you have a way of having some things accessible and not have it tied up to where you could be stuck in a 5-day situation, 10-day situation, whatever it may be. But yeah, so, and I have multiple, as you do, I know, accounts on exchanges for that very reason. So I have options.
Definitely. And it's so important to have options. And again, that's just what we're recommending, because we could be as prepared as we are. But again, kind of going to the grocery store and seeing no food. There was literally no meat. There was no dairy. There was no cheese, nothing. Yeah. Change happens in an instant. And that, and our lives could have been so different, after that moment. So it's just super important. We're whatever we need more support in some of our prepping, let's get it. Let's just go do it over the next couple weeks. Cause we're living in unstable times. We have midterm elections coming up. There's a lot going on, but the bill between Loomis and Gillibrand will be reintroduced in January 2023. So we want to look at it. We want to read it. Kelly's going to add the link to contact your senators, because central bank digital currencies are going to be pushed to be adopted.
Right.
The Swift system yesterday made another announcement that they're ready. Even though they just made the announcement with Chainlink to do a proof of concept to interoperate, they're ready to do all central bank digital currencies. Yeah. And I think that that's fine if you're going to do it from institution to institution. Once you start giving central bank digital currencies to people, like average people, and this isn't money, y'all, this is code. Right? So as fast as they can put that digital dollar into your account, they can reverse it. They can put an expiration date on it. And, they're going to try to roll out this carbon credit system. My carbon credit. That's what it's going to be called. And these people are crazy. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it'll fail. But this is the closest that I've ever seen in my lifetime to have these huge non-elected government entities, international government entities, it does look like they're kind of succeeding right now. In so many different ways. So we just want to be prepared, and we want to click on that link, keep it handy, because we want to make sure we have privacy, and we don't want to do a central bank digital currency. We want to do a digital dollar. Super important.
Go ahead and add this link just really quickly here to the screen, so that those that are watching this directly on YouTube, they can see it. Here you go. It's right there. It will be in the notes for the podcast, though. So, but to Andrea's point, it is really important to, reach out. Your voice makes a difference. All of our voices make a difference, and we need to be sure to utilize it. We are given it for a reason. So, looks like we might have lost Andrea. Let's give her just a minute here to see if she can pop back in. Perfect. And Andrea is back.
Sorry about that, y'all. We're having some technical difficulties here. It happens. It happens. Um, oh, so the other, I was like, I don't even remember what we were talking about, but let's just jump into Rosie Rios because she was interviewed. For those of you who don't know who Rosie Rios is, she's the 43rd treasurer of the United States government. And she also joined the board at Ripple. And she's also part of this like show that it's called Unicorn Hunters, right? And they have a coin called Unicoin. So they're interviewing her, and she was basically saying, and which was a really good point, we need innovation in order for the economy to recover.
Yeah.
And I believe that to be true as well, right? So, when I think about like the recession that we went through in 2008, and if you really think about it, it was the technology and that innovation that kind of helped drive us out of that recession, right? Because let's think about it. We had Facebook, we had YouTube, we had cell phones, all of the different innovation. It's the same thing. So even though we're going to lose some jobs, like the blockchain and the new digital economy will create all new jobs as well. So
Right. And it's a global economy. It's not, I mean, when we think about working, I mean, you and I were talking last night, we have clients from all over the world. I have, I mean, all over the world. So we can't be narrow minded and think that, okay, well, we're just going to work here or we're going to exist in this way. We're going to exist in a very global, universal way in the future.
no, absolutely. Absolutely. It's just so super important, and then the other thing too, I kind of wanted to mention is that, there's an article that came out, and right after midterm elections, there's going to be another bill introduced into Congress that will legalize companies to hold Bitcoin for people's 401k and pension plans. So I know a lot of folks are super nervous about their retirement. But again, if it's like that diversification. So as Bitcoin becomes more and more adopted, and we, and folks that have a 401k can shift some of their money into Bitcoin, into Ethereum. We know like Fidelity's got their Ethereum index fund, right?
Right.
So we're seeing the changes happen, and it's kind of like shutting out all of the noise from the mass media. Because if I just listened to them, I would be paralyzed and I wouldn't know what to do.
Oh, yeah, well, absolutely. Based on their own quote unquote agendas. So,
Exactly. So when we're looking at protecting our wealth and we're looking at protecting our money, we really want to follow the money. That's how we know what's true and what's not true, is looking at all of these international companies and look at what they're doing.
right.
And then we're going to do that. We're definitely going to do that. And that's what we're doing, like, especially with Bitcoin, especially with Ethereum, not financial advice, but these are the two main cryptos that are being adopted that have regulatory clarity so far. So
So that,
definitely something to keep in mind.
yeah, because so, in the corporate world or when you're working with, a specific employer, not a personal contract, you have to make your elections. I guess everybody does. Come November, you start making your elections for the following year. So next year at the same time, we'll see opportunities for that diversification to happen through our employer funds or whatever the case may be. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm super interested to see how this like financial innovation act that Loomis and Gillibrand put together, because I know they're meeting with all the different, they're meeting with the SEC, they're meeting with the CFTC, they're meeting with the Treasury, and they're putting together this regulatory framework. And if we look at Europe's framework, because this is like a done deal, they're going to pass their bill. It's called MiCA. So it's kind of like their regulatory clarity for their crypto assets.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like it's going to be a new asset class. And certain cryptos are going to fall into like e-money or assets, whatever it may be. But like, if we're looking at what the global leaders want to do, and that's to kind of homogenize all of the international standards, I would think that America would be something similar. Okay. And again, the bills aren't that bad when it comes to like privacy and things like that. I think those are going to be in separate bills. But that's why, like, Kelly and I just really wanted to post, contact your senator, because pretty much from midterms into early next year, a lot of decisions are going to be made on digital ID, central bank digital currencies. And we really want to get involved. Like, now is our moment of time. And it doesn't just affect us, it affects every single generation to come.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. Big changes.
Big changes are coming. And I got to tell you, I feel really good about it, because when I'm looking at like, what they're looking to roll out with the social credit scores, and I encourage everybody, go online and watch videos in China, with, you got to scan your face just to get on a train. Every step you take, you're being tracked. And I know a lot of people would argue with me, well, Andrew, we're already tracked. But it's different when it comes to your finances. You know what I mean? It's different if it's like, well, Andrea, you went and you visited your family 100 miles away, so you used your carbon credits. Now you can buy more. And I'm assuming everybody in Two Women in Crypto and anyone who's in crypto, we're going to have a lot of carbon credits. But this isn't just about us, it's about everybody, right? So it's just like, will you have carbon credits to have a child? Like, this is how crazy some of this stuff is. So we have to, this is going to be our moment to shut this down. Like I said, starting after midterm elections into early 2023, we want to be diligent. We need to rise, make our voices heard. Like, you can find out who your senator is, who your House of Representative is, be nice to them. Don't, like, just say, hey, like, I'm concerned, or we don't want this. Like, make sure CBDCs are for institutions. Let us use the United States digital coin, right? Totally different.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an important time right now for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be one of the most exciting times to be alive. Like, just to be like an observer, right? It's fascinating.
We talk about it all the time. Every day I wake up, it's like, what is going to be shown today on the world stage? And, and I don't look at anything from a place of, I'm just from a very observatory place, and leaning into all of it, because there's truth in all things. It's just a matter of, deciphering what is my truth and what feels in resonance with my existence, which we encourage everybody to tap into, and not just be falling in line because there's a line and you're being pointed to it. That's all.
Yeah, definitely. And, I wanted to ask you too, Kelly, before we start wrapping up our session, are you finding that a lot of places in Portland aren't accepting cash?
There's been a few times where I've gone to pay in smaller stores that they're only accepting cards.
Okay.
For the most part, but when you go to a farmer's market here, they don't accept cards. You have to have cash. Or if you do, if they, they always point you to the local ATM. So I think it just depends on the dynamic. I have been to a couple places where they didn't have enough cash to give me change back. We just don't have any cash on hand, but so but I'm not a shopper, so I'm probably not the right person to really ask that question, because what I do purchase are just my necessities. I've never have been a shopper. It's not just a sign of the times for me. It's just who I am. I'm not a person that's like, let me go into that boutique and I'm going to buy something. So it's kind of a hard thing for me to really give a fair report back on.
Yeah, because I was talking to my cousin who lives in, Charlotte, North Carolina, and he was saying a lot of places aren't accepting cash at all. Even some of the banks, like, they're really pushing people. And I remember my friends from New Jersey kind of telling me the same thing. So we want to watch the transition to a cashless society. And like, again, it's kind of like I encourage everybody, use cash, right?
Yeah.
So let's
Yeah.
start doing the opposite, because the longer we can keep physical dollars going, like the more control we have over our money, right? Because that is sovereignty, to have a physical dollar instead of something that's on an app that can just be frozen to make a transaction.
Well, and I use cash mostly for my groceries. And this is kind of silly, but I'll be honest about it. Maybe it's not silly, honestly. And I do that for a myriad of reasons. Number one, I don't want them to keep track of what I'm buying for my food. I mean, although they'll be able to if I'm using my customer card. I mean, they'll be able to track it. This at the end of the day, everything's being tracked, people. Everything.
Right.
You say boo to somebody, they're going to track the fact that you say boo. In my neighborhood here, every home has a camera. So if anybody's out there thinking that you can walk down the street thinking nobody knows what you're doing in case you decide to scratch your nose, it's all, all bets are off. You just need to understand that everything you do is being recorded in some fashion or another. Period.
Yeah. I just wish we had a little bit more balance with it. So
yeah, I mean, but it's wild, because I'll be walking at dusk or at early dawn, and you'll see everybody's cameras turn on as you're walking by. Wow.
Yeah, it's not as prominent here where I live, but I know a lot of people have that doorbell thing, and you don't realize that we're actually putting in the infrastructure for our own surveillance. So,
well, and it's a fine line to walk. I mean, I know that we have here, there's a ring installed, but that's because all the Christmas packages were stolen this last Christmas off the front porch. There was a big delivery and everything was taken. So, I mean, there's a reason. It's a fine line. I think there's a difference between if you choose to put a ring in and you're monitoring the safety of your own home and things of that nature, versus then the powers that be have access to those digital recordings without asking. They have access. That's a completely different topic.
Yeah. No, it's such a good point. It's such a good point. All things we want to keep an eye on. But for now, we got cash in the house. We got our community. We got our food, our water, our shelter, our gold, our silver. We got this. We got this. And again, I still think, like, when I think about these systems from like a technology perspective, connecting centralized finance to decentralized finance, if the tyranny gets to a point where it's so high, we are smart enough to transition into DeFi completely. And there's a lot of developers, there's a lot of people, not so much in power with government, but these developers and, just the creators of a lot of these different blockchains are freedom focused. And, we should have the right for freedom of movement and freedom to purchase whatever we want. So we're definitely going to be keeping an eye on this over the next couple months. I think things are just moving so super quickly, so it can be kind of overwhelming. So like I said, just keep listening to our songs, ground, put your feet in the earth, and we're going to transition through this together. It's going to be okay.
We are. And as we wrap things up, we just want to give a great shout out to our sponsors, as always. Super, super thrilled to be partnering, of course, with the Above Phone, and then Computer Diva and her computer support, computerdiva.biz, and markleymobile.com for any of your notary needs. But so thank you, everybody, for that support. You can check out our website under sponsors and affiliates to find out more information as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you can check out twowomeninCrypto.com, check out our blog. I try to post, whenever I have some free time, I always try to post like a positive song and write about it. Cause a lot of this is like technology war, all these different things, right? Geopolitical wars, but a lot of it is an energy war. So we want to keep our energy rising. We want to show love. We want to give love. We want to be kind, because collectively we will steer this ship into a better world. So it's going to be bumpy. It's going to look like dystopia. It's going to look like tyranny. But these systems are getting exposed for who they truly are.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we'll build better systems.
Absolutely. So until next week, we encourage everybody to
hodl on.
Hodl on.
Your hosts for Two Women in Crypto are Andrea Caldero and Kelly Lair. You'll find more information and details regarding the Two Women in Crypto membership, educational and informative class and event offerings, and more via their website, twowomeninCrypto.com. Both Andrea and Kelly are available for speaking events and offer private consultations focused on helping individuals navigate the future. Until next time, hodl on.